Hello, what's up everybody? How is it going? Welcome to another video of tutorial series Learning Laravel from Scratch. I'm your host Anwar Ali and I'm here today with a new topic, and the topic is learning resource controller in Laravel. Resource controller is a really important topic in Laravel that helps us to minimize our code so much that we don't have to write routes for each and every URL we make in the controller like we are doing right now. At the same time, managing the resources, by meaning resource, I'm trying to say you the object of the model becomes so easy, and storing the objects and editing the objects, or let's say saving the objects, deleting the objects, become really easy. It really minimizes the code. But I want to discuss about the complexities if we don't use resource controller before we start with the resource controller. So if we are not using resource controller, let me just quickly show you one of the examples without using the resource controller. So this was something that we did last time. So if you go to admin, localhost project public admin, we had created categories, a link for the categories. We had created a page where we list our category, and we were about to learn add new category, edit, delete today. So I want to create another page, and let's say let us open our controller first. Our controller was categories controller. So let's create another function over here and maybe call it detail, where we want to show the detail of the category. Okay, so we want to show the detail of a specific category, so I would like to pass an ID over here. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to grab the ID with this ID, grab the entry of this ID from the database of the category, and display its title, let's say. So in order to do that, what I want to do is I will have to write let's say create a variable, let us just call it cat equals to, so category. Now if you want to grab an array or group of everything that is in the database, we call a function called find, I mean all. But if you want to get a single let's say entry, you just call find and pass in the ID over here. So this is our ID, so I'm passing this ID in find, so it will just return me a single row now. So cat equals to category find with this ID will return a single entry of ID, so that we don't have to use loop anymore. Now what I can do is I can just say echo $cat title. Let's say I want to display the title of the category. Okay, so this is our function. Now next step, what I have to do is I have to write the route for this function, right? So here is our route inside our web. Let me write another route for this. So route get admin / categories, and let's say detail, and we are passing the ID into the URL. So we need to pass some ID through the URL so that we recognize which ID we want to see or which news we want to see. So in order to pass any parameters to the URL, what we need to do in Laravel is we just give a slash and place our, let's say, segment over here this way, but we don't give dollar in front of this. So whatever is the name of the parameter in our function, we give the same name over here. The segment should be the same name. So we are passing the variable as $id, so then the name of our segment should be ID over here as well. Okay, so this means categories controllers @detail function, right? Let me just call this, let's say, detail underscore category. Okay, so this is our function. Let us check our database before. So let me just quickly check my database first. So localhost / php myadmin, and my project is project. Inside my categories I have ID number 1 and ID number 2. So let me just manually browse. So we have created a route for detail, which is admin / categories / detail, and let me pass one of the IDs over here, and let's say 1 or 2. Let me just pass 2. So if I pass 2, this means I'm trying to get the entry of entertainment, right? And I've echoed the title of the category. So entertainment should be displayed, right? It should be detail. Enter. It is saying parse error in my routes. Let's say what we made a mistake. If you go to web route get, we missed a slash over here, slash admin slash category slash detail slash id, comma, categories controller add detail, and my bracket ends here, and my name, we missed the name is detail category. Okay, now let me just refresh this. So we got the entertainment over here. So basically what we do is, whenever we create a function in our controller, we have to write the equivalent route in our web. So let us say if we have 10 functions in a controller, then we have to write 10 routes for each and every function. But generally, what do we do inside a controller? We generally perform some CRUD operations along with, let's say, detail page or listing page, right? So generally, whenever we create a controller or module, we list it out, we create a new module and we save that module after we let's say fill out the create form. Then we let's say edit the existing module, so we load the content of that module in an edit form, and we hit save. So we update the module and we delete the module, and sometimes we might want to view the detail of the module. So these are some 4 or 5 functions that we generally do in our modules, right? So Laravel has made it easy by creating all these 5 functions in the same controller. And sometimes we also delete the module, right? So all these 5 or 6 functions, and that is related to the CRUD operations through resource controller and managing it by single route. We don't have to do anything about it. We just write a single route and mention that this is the resource route. At the same time, we create a resource controller, and all the route is already been covered by the single line of code. And at the same time, all of the functions are auto generated. We just need to type in the code inside each function, but the function is already there. At the same time, it handles the type. So right now we can see we have everything is get, but sometimes we want to post things while we are saving a content from create form. We generally don't use get, we use post. So in that case, we need to create a route for post. Similarly, when we are updating something, or we need to use patch or put. Sometimes similarly, when we are deleting some entry, we need to use delete type. So we have get, we have post, we have put, and patch, we have delete. So we need to use all those things in different scenario. But using the resource controller, we just write a single line of route that will take care of all those things. We don't need to worry about put, patch, delete, get, post. Okay, so let's see. If you go to the documentation of Laravel and just search for resource controller, you will find resource controller under controllers topic. So let's go over there. So this is our resource controller. So whenever we want to make our controller resource controller, we just need to add minus resource or dash resource at the end of the command, and this will create a resource controller for us. At the same time, whenever we need to write the routes for all the functions generated by resource controller, we just need to mention this one single line of code in our web.php inside routes, and this line of code will take care of all the routes. So what I want to do today is, I just want to back up my categories controller. So just rename this, and maybe add an underscore at the end so that we can reuse the code. Let me just close this and remove all the routes related to the categories, because we are not using this anymore. Okay, now what I want to do is, I want to create a resource controller for categories. So let me just open my terminal. Now need to go to the folder of the project. So applications, amps, www project. This is my applications, it's applications, amps www project. Now I need to create a controller. So php artisan make controller. The name of my controller would be let's say categories controller, and this will be a resource controller. So minus minus resource. Okay, hit enter, controller created successfully. Previously we had a blank controller like this. Let's see, like this, just test. But if you now open a resource controller that we just created, which is categories controller, you will see all the functions is already been placed over here, and the routes for these functions has already been mentioned in if we just copy this line of code and paste it over here, this means route resource, instead of photos we should have categories. So categories, and photo controller should be categories. Okay, so categories will be our routes. All the functions related to categories will be covered by this single line of code, and our controller name would be categories controller. Okay, so this one piece of line of code will take care of all these functions. We don't have to write routes for each and every function anymore. Now let us discuss what these all functions are about. So index is generally used to list out all the, it's written over here, display a listing of a resource. So whenever, let's say we are creating a resource control for categories, this means index function will be responsible to display all the categories. Similarly, if you want to create a form, in order to create a new category, we'll just use this function, because show the form of the creating new resource. Okay, this is related to the form. Now after we hit submit in that form, it will post some data to some function, and that function will be store. So store is a function which is used to store the newly created category in our database. This is not for update, this is just for create. So after we hit submit button in our create form, it should submit our button our form to this function. Similarly, we would like to, let's say, so is generally used to view the detail of the detail of something. So this is the function that is responsible to view the detail of some let's say module. Similarly, we have edit. It is just like create, but instead we have to let's say pass on some value to the view, so that we auto populate the existing entry in our form. In the case of create, we will have a blank form, while in case of edit we might have, let's say, a form filled with pre-existing value in the database. Now after we hit submit in the edit form, it should update our entry to database, and that will be taken care by update function. Similarly, we have last one, which is destroy, which is used to delete the entry in the database. Okay, now if you go and see, there are some of the actions, let's say some of the let's say type or submission type of an action. So index, it is saying that index is used as get, because it is grabbing entry from the database and just listing it. So create is not, is just a form which is being displayed in a browser, so it is also get. But after we hit submit in the create, it takes us to store, so it is posting some data to the action. So it is, its type is post. Similarly, whenever we try to view a file, we do nothing, we just grab the entry from the database and display it in the browser, so it is get. Similarly, while editing it, it is just auto populating entries from database in the form, so it is also get. But whenever we update it, it is not just a simple post. In this case, while storing it, we are submitting the entries of form to the database, so this is known as post. But in case of update, we are doing the same, we are submitting an entry to the database, but at the same time we are adding an ID to make it clear that which entry of the database we are about to update. So we are patching or putting an ID along with the array of the form values. So such scenario where along with the form values we where we use an extra field, that is ID, in order to save entries to the database, in that scenario is known as put and patch. So only difference between this and this is this directly submits the values, form values, to database and create a new one. But in case of update, we need to be explicitly mentioning that which entry of database we want to update. So we need to patch an ID along with the form values. So such scenario is known as put and patch. Okay, and finally we have delete. So delete, while deleting any entry from database, this could be a little bit let's say confidential or secured information or secured action that we don't want to allow everybody. So we have a special submission type known as delete. So if we try to access this URL using get or post or put or patch, it is not going to work. We have to explicitly mention that this type of submission is of delete type, only then shall it work. Okay, similarly we previously had created whenever we worked on routes, we had created names of each route, but since we don't have name of each and every function of this route, so name, we should follow this convention. So whenever we are trying to access the index function of a controller, we'll write the controller name and dot index. So in our case it could be categories dot index. So if we are browsing create function, we will be using categories dot create. For store, categories dot store. For show, categories dot show, and so on. Similarly, you can see that previously we had a URL, and that URL was let's say represented by a route name, but now in this case you can see there are same URL being repeated. For example, this and this has exactly same URL. Can you see that? But this and this is being separated by the let's say submission type. So this is get and this is post. So in case of routes in Laravel, even the submission type or route type will also make the URL completely different. So if we have an admin which is of type get, that is a separate route, and if we have an admin which has type post, that is a separate route. So in the same way, we have here two URLs exactly same, but the submission type is get and post, so they are both completely separate route and representing completely separate functions. Okay, so in this case it is representing index function, while in this case it is representing store function. Similarly, you can see that photos slash photo, so this could be ID or this could be anything, slug, anything. So if we have photos slash something, this means get, and this represents show. And if we have photos slash something, which is exactly same as this, but if it is of put or patch type, this is representing update. And if we have photos slash something, the same URL, but if the submission type is delete, it is representing destroy function. So these are some of the basic things that we need to know. Just we need to be careful which name to be used, which route name to be used where, and what are the submission types of which actions and how to use them. So this was the basic introduction of routes. We will be trying to use the resource controller for some of our functions that we did earlier, and continue the topic later on. So let me just complete the first thing that we did previously. So our public function index is equivalent to what we did last time. So if you go to categories controller backup that we just created, we will just copy these two lines of code, which was actually grabbing all the entries from categories table and sending it to the view file this way. So this is one of the way in order to send the values to the view file, or we could also just say comma and pass the array over here like this. Okay, so this could be also be another way of working with the view file. So currently I will just use with, so we are passing all the categories to admin, categories, and index. Now second thing that we need to now modify is, if you go to our layout, resources, views, layouts, and admin blade, if you see here in our admin, it is now throwing us error because we are using a route in a sidebar which was list category, which does not exist anymore, because we had created a route called list category in order to generate the link in our sidebar for category, but that does not exist anymore. Now in order to list the category, the name of the route that we need to use is photos/index or categories/index, right? So if we go to see our admin blade in the block for menu for category, we should not use list category, rather we should use categories dot index as suggested by our resource controller documentation. So this is the route that we need to use. This is the controller name, so in our case it will be categories dot index. Okay, now after we place in categories dot index, this should work fine. See, okay, now if you click on category, it is saying it is not category, it is categories. Yes, so it is saying class app http controller category not found in here. Okay, we have not used the model yet, so use app slash category. So after we've done this, use app slash category, and we also maybe need to copy our constructor from our backup so that we check the session, we do the session handling before browsing any function. Now let us try to refresh this. So it is listing our category. Now our URL is public/categories, which is working fine. I hope you understood how to use the resource controller. So we will continue with the topic using resource controller to add new entries, editing the entries, deleting the entries. So generally whenever we work in any module, we will no more be using a normal controller unless we have to, but we will generally be using resource controller. So that is why before proceeding with the other topics, I wanted you to understand the resource controller properly, and I hope this video made sense, and I will continue soon with the new topic, add category, edit and delete using resource controller. I hope you understood the video, and if you did like the video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to my channel and share the video. I'll see you guys maybe today or tomorrow with the new topic. Till then, have a nice time, and if you have any confusions, you can mention it in the comment and I will try my best to answer them. Okay then, goodbye.